welcome back to the deep dive. You know, there's a phrase I hear constantly in tech meetings, marketing pitches, everywhere really, the global village.
Ah, yes. The classic Marshall McLuhan idea.
Exactly.
Mm,
And it's such a seductive concept, isn't it? I mean, you look at your
yeah.
phone, you can FaceTime a friend in Timbuktu.
Right?
You can buy the exact same pair of limited edition Reeboks in New York or in New Delhi. So the thinking goes, well, because we're all connected, the world is smaller. We get each other.
It's a nice thought, but the research we're diving into today suggests that might be a bit of a dangerous illusion.
A dangerous solution.
Or at the very least, a massive oversimplification. Because, just because you can transmit a message instantly doesn't mean you've actually communicated with the person on the other end.
And that distinction between just sending something and real communication, that's the heart of our deep dive today on intercultural communication.
It really is.
We're basing this on the work of Xuanglu, Soloveitchuk, and Cindy Galai. And their core argument is that, yeah, technology has shrunk the physical world, but the psychological distance, the software of the mind, that hasn't shrunk at all.
Software of the mind. That's a Geert Hofstede term, and it is the perfect metaphor for this.
It is, isn't it?
Think about it. We might all be using the same hardware now, iPhones, laptops, you name it. But the operating systems running inside our heads, our values, our logic, what we think is right or wrong, those are completely different OSs.
And if you try to run an app that was designed for, say, OS America on OS Japan without some kind of emulator.
It crashes. And in the tech world, that just means you get an error message. And in the real world, you get a failed business merger, a diplomatic incident, or you just accidentally insult your host's entire family.
So the mission here isn't just about, being tolerant.
No, tolerance is too passive. It's just putting up with something. The real goal is competence. It's understanding that culture is this web that we all spin ourselves. And in a world where, get this, over 232 million people are living outside their country of birth, knowing how to navigate that web is a basic survival skill.
232 million. That's a staggering number. I want to unpack that because it really does feel like the friction between cultures is more intense now than it was, say, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
What's actually driving that?
Well, the source material points to three main drivers that are really reshaping everything. The first one is something we've touched on already, but it's advanced technology and transport.
Right. Just the simple ability to move and talk across distances.
But it's the kind of communication. We've shifted from, face-to-face village life to what the text calls VoIP.
Voice over Internet Protocol. So we're just talking through data packets now.
Exactly. And even what we're doing right now, podcasting. The word itself is a blend of iPod and broadcasting. It means anyone can send their voice out to the entire globe instantly.
But the catch is that you lose all the context.
All of it. The body language, the atmosphere, everything. You're just getting the raw words, and it makes misunderstanding so much easier because you're missing the cues we've relied on for thousands of years.
Okay, so tech is driver number one. What's the second?
The global economy. I mean, we have to talk about the business of culture. Cross-cultural business isn't some niche thing anymore. It's the default.
So you can't just say, I'm only going to work with people who think exactly like me.
Not if you want a job, no. And that flows right into the third and maybe the most powerful driver, migration.
Let's go back to that 232 million number.
The authors show this massive jump. In 1990, it was 154 million international migrants. By 2012, 232 million. That's a huge increase in just 2 decades.
It's a demographic tidal wave, really.
It is. And the destinations are interesting. Back in 2012, the U.S. had the most, around 46 million. But the next two on the list were the Russian Federation and Germany.
And this huge movement of people brings up that old metaphor I grew up with, the melting pot. The idea that everyone comes to a new place, you all jump in, and you melt into one uniform American soup or whatever.
De pluribus unum.
But most scholars have moved away from that idea. It implies you have to burn away your old identity to belong.
So what's the better metaphor now?
The salad bowl.
Okay, I can picture that.
Think about it. In a salad, the carrot is right next to the lettuce. They're in the same bowl, they're covered in the same dressing, which is maybe, the law of the land, but the carrot is still carrot.
So they integrate without dissolving.
That's it. That's the idea of multiculturalism. But the text is clear that this is a real double-edged sword.
How so?
On one hand, you get incredible innovation. The source material mentions Malaysia's workforce Malays, Chinese, Indians, all working together. You get different software on the same problem. You find solutions a single group would never see.
But the other side of the sword
is fear. Host nations worry that their mainstream values, the lettuce, I guess, are getting overwhelmed. They worry about the society fracturing into pieces that don't share a common ground. And this is where it gets serious, because the authors stress that being ignorant of these differences isn't just awkward, it can be genuinely dangerous.
Absolutely. This is the real why should I care part. If you don't know the local rules, you can end up in prison.
Literally.
Yes. The text gives some really stark examples. Let's say you're a tourist in Egypt. You see this beautiful bridge over the Suez Canal. You pull out your phone.
And snap a picture for Instagram.
And you may have just committed a serious crime. Photographing certain infrastructure there is seen as a security threat. You're not a tourist. You're a potential spy.
And in India.
Similar rules. Taking pictures of airports or military dams can land you in prison for 3 to 14 years.
14 years for a photograph. It's just a total software clash.
And it's not just security, it's about core values. Take Thailand. The monarchy is held as sacred.
They have those strict lèse-majesté laws.
Exactly. And the definition of insult is very culturally specific. So a banknote falls out of your pocket, it's blowing away. Your reflex might be to step on it to stop it.
I would absolutely do that with a $20 bill without a second thought.
But in Thailand, that banknote has the king's face on it. You just stepped on the king's face. That's a grave insult. You could face actual prison time for that simple reflex.
That is the perfect example. My software says, save the money. Their software says, protect the king's honor. Same action, completely different realities.
Which is why this isn't just an academic subject. It's a survival guide.
Okay, so let's pivot from law to the economy, because money is a huge part of this. The authors talk about cultural industries.
Right, and this gets us into cultural economics. It's the idea that culture itself, art, music, stories, identity, has become a product to be packaged and sold.
The text mentions the Frankfurt School here, Adorno and Horkheimer.
Yeah, and they were writing way back in the mid-20th century, but they were so ahead of their time. They said the culture industry, movies, pop music, wasn't really about art. It was about turning audiences into passive consumers.
So we're not participating in culture, we're just adding it to our shopping cart.
And being shaped by it. But what's really fascinating now is that it's not just companies anymore. Entire countries are selling themselves.
You mean nation branding?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Countries are acting like corporations. They hire marketing agencies to create a brand identity.
Give me an example of that.
Okay, when I say Switzerland, what are the first words that come to your mind?
Precision, watches, chocolate, banks.
See? That is a carefully managed brand. Switzerland sells trust and quality. Now, Brazil...
Carnival,
Yeah.
samba, soccer, joy.
Brazil sells vibrancy and passion. Colombia did it with Café de Colombia.
It clearly works, but it does feel a little reductive, like you're turning a whole complex country into a slogan.
That's the #1 critique. It commodifies difference. It takes a nation's unique heritage and turns it into a unique selling proposition.
So if a country is a brand, what happens when a big foreign brand tries to move in? This brings us to the KFC story in the book, right?
This is maybe my favorite case study in here because it illustrates a key concept so perfectly. It's called glocalization.
Global plus local. It sounds like a marketing buzzword. How does it actually work?
So KFC enters China. They don't just drop an American menu in the middle of Beijing and expect it to work. They knew the software of Chinese taste was completely different.
But fried chicken is pretty universal, isn't it?
The chicken, maybe, but the sides? Not so much. They realized that coleslaw, raw cabbage in mayonnaise, was just not going to fly, so they cut it.
No more coleslaw.
Gone. They replaced it with things like bamboo shoots and lotus roots. But the truly genius move was the old Peking flavor twister.
What was that?
Well, they looked at one of the most beloved local dishes, Peking duck, and they basically created a fast food version of it with fried chicken, cucumber, scallions, and that classic sweet bean sauce.
So it's sold by KFC, but it tastes like Beijing.
That is cultural hybridization. It's not American and it's not Chinese. It's a new third thing. And that's the secret to winning in the global economy. You can't just impose. You have to adapt and blend.
That's a perfect way to bring it down to the individual level. We've talked about nations and corporations. Let's talk about us. The text has this great analogy that culture is like luggage.
Culture is the luggage we carry.
I feel like my luggage is just dirty socks and chargers, but
Yeah.
I assume they mean something a bit deeper.
Just a little deeper. The idea is that when we open that bag, we find our values, our assumptions, our rules for how the world is supposed to work. And the formal definition of intercultural communication is the process where people use shared codes to exchange information in a particular cultural context.
There's that word again. Context.
It's the most important word. Communication is never just the words, it's all the unarticulated meanings floating around them.
So how do we study this luggage? Because my default setting, and I think this is true for most people, is to look at someone else's luggage and just go, wow, that's a weird outfit.
And that is the difference-based approach. It's a product of ethnocentrism.
Ethnocentrism. The idea that my culture is the default setting for reality.
Exactly. You judge everyone and everything by your own standards. So when you see a difference, your brain labels it wrong or weird or inefficient. And that just shuts down all understanding.
So what's the better way?
The context-based approach, or cultural relativism. It means you try to judge a culture by its own logic.
So back to the Thailand example. Instead of seeing someone get upset about stepping on a banknote and thinking, that's crazy,
You ask, okay, what is the internal logic in this system that makes that reaction make sense? You don't have to agree with it, but you have to try to understand it on its own terms.
this gets us to the actual tools. The text gives us two specific anthropological lenses for doing this, emic and etic.
They sound a bit technical, but they are the essential tools for this work. Let's start with etic.
Etic, E-T-I-C.
The etic approach is the view from the outside. You're the scientist on the hill looking down at the village. You're searching for universal patterns that exist across many cultures.
So if I did a study comparing, say, power distance in 50 different countries, that would be an etic approach.
That is a perfect example. You're using one universal yardstick to measure everybody. It's great for seeing big picture trends.
Okay, so then what is emic?
Emic is the view from the inside. You put down the universal yardstick and you try to understand a culture using the concepts and terms that are meaningful within that culture. You're trying to see the world through their eyes.
The book uses the Chinese concept of guangxi to explain this.
Yes, it's the classic case. If you take an etic or outsider view, you might look at business in China and say, oh, it's all about networking. It's just who you know.
It's schmoozing.
Right, but that's just pasting an American concept over a Chinese reality, and it misses everything.
So what's the emic view?
The emic view tries to understand guangxi on its own terms. It's not networking. It's a complex, long-term system of social debt, reciprocity, and obligation. If I have guangxi with you, I am bound to you in a way that goes way beyond just grabbing coffee.
And if you treat guangxi like simple networking, you're going to fail.
You're going to fail, and you're probably going to cause offense while you're at it. You have to know the internal rules of the game.
So etic is the bird's eye view for comparing, and emic is the worm's eye view for understanding.
And real cultural competence is being able to switch between the two. You need the big data, but you also need the personal stories.
This really does bring it all together. We started with this idea of the global village and saw how messy it is. We looked at the driver's tech, migration pushing us all into this global salad bowl. We saw how companies like KFC adapt and how we need to adapt ourselves using these tools.
It really highlights what the text calls the dialectic of globalization. It's not moving in one straight line.
A push and a pull.
Exactly. On one hand, you have homogenization. Things are becoming more similar. You can get an iPhone anywhere.
Right.
But at the exact same time, you have fragmentation. As a reaction to that global pressure, people are clinging more tightly than ever to their local identities. The more global the world gets, the more people shout, no, this is who I am. This is my tribe.
That explains so much of the polarization we're seeing everywhere. It's a defense mechanism against the melting pot.
People don't want to melt. They want to be seen.
So for the listener who's trying to navigate all this,
Right.
what's the big takeaway? You can't be expected to memorize the customs of 195 countries.
No, of course not. The goal isn't just knowledge, it's competence. It's a mindset. It's about being flexible and realizing your cultural software is just one OS out of many.
And that yours isn't necessarily the pro version.
Precisely. Your cultural identity isn't a fixed thing. It's a process. It's constantly being negotiated with the people around you.
I want to leave our listeners with one last thought from the reading. We talked about nation branding, selling cool Britannia or Samba Brazil.
It leads to a really provocative question to end on. As we see cultures branding themselves like products for the global market, are we really celebrating diversity? Or are we just turning our own heritage into a kind of socially destructive consumer culture?
Are we sharing our culture or just selling a cheap souvenir version of it?
Something to think about.
Indeed. Thanks for listening to this deep dive.
See you next time.